South America is one of the world's most geographically extreme continents. Stretching from near Antarctica all the way to the Caribbean Sea, it contains a vast slice of Earth's fascinating topography. Let's take a virtual trip around South America, seeing the highest points of natural elevation in each country and territory, going in order from lowest to highest. Welcome to my channel, Chicago Geographer. I post geography videos just like this one every other week with geoguessr content sprinkled in between. Make sure to subscribe to stay in the loop, and let's get started. Unlike some other parts of the world I've made high point videos about, every single place on this list actually has some type of hill or mountain. A side note, I don't speak Spanish, Portuguese, or Dutch, so please forgive me if my pronunciations aren't perfect. With that in mind, Uruguay starts us off with the 514-meter Cerro Catedral, not to be confused with the much taller mountain of the same name in Argentina. It's in the hilly southeast part of the country, just 45 kilometers from the coast. Despite its relatively low elevation, the rocky terrain of this summit doesn't support much vegetation apart from one variety of shrub and some grass. I guess it must be pretty windy out here too, since there's a wind farm located among these hills. A bunch of dirt roads run right next to the summit, making this an easy climb. The Falkland Islands, or Islas Malvinas, are located on the South American continental shelf, and I figured it would be interesting to include this UK-administered territory. The highest point here is Mount Usborne, called Cerro Alberti in Spanish, at 705 meters above sea level. Found on the island of East Falkland, it's only 5 meters higher than the highest point on West Falkland, the other half of this island territory. Mount Usborne's remote summit on an already remote archipelago isn't exactly the most studied or explored high point on the list. The mountain is named after Alexander Usborne, a prominent crew member aboard Charles Darwin's HMS Beagle expedition to the area. Back to the mainland we go, and Uruguay's brother by name is next, Paraguay. Cerro Tres Candu is the highest mountain peak in the country, rising to 842 meters in elevation. It's found in Guayra department in the south of the country, and its prominence of over 550 meters among its comparatively flat farmland surroundings gives it a quite impressive appearance. Historically, this mountain was a strategic radio communication post for Paraguay's armed forces, but today it's a public hiking area. Don't let the low elevation fool you, the trail here apparently has some very steep sections with no switchbacks. The true summit is located among the dense forest cover with an open viewpoint just a bit south. Time for another place owned by a European power as we head up north to French Guiana. Beating out Paraguay by just 9 meters, its highest point of Bellevue de Ligny reaches 851 meters above sea level. This summit is located deep in the Guiana Amazonian Park. The nearest major town of Marapasula is over 50 kilometers away, which is itself a very isolated and difficult place to visit. Bellevue de Ligny is probably the least understood mountain on this list, being largely inaccessible and seldom explored. A French botanist, Jean-Jacques de Granville, visited and wrote a book about it in the 80s, but apart from that, I can't even find any verified photos of this mountain online. Maybe a future famous explorer will shed more light on this mysterious place. Neighboring Suriname is the first to break the kilometer mark with another unbelievably hard to reach Amazonian peak. Julianatop rises above the rest of the country at an elevation of 1,230 meters. Despite tales of an indigenous man summiting the mountain in 1963, there is only one verified journey to the top. This happened in 2006 when a group of brave expeditioners flew into Kaiser Airstrip 65 kilometers south of the peak, to which they hiked for 12 days through the jungle guided by locals. Thanks to them, the flag of Suriname now proudly flies at the top of this peak, which was named for the mid-20th century Dutch queen. And in extremely satisfying fashion, Guyana is up next to finish this trio of small northern regions and also more than doubles the elevation from Suriname. Located at Guyana's tri-point with Venezuela and Brazil is the national high point of 2,772 meters, a section of the incredible plateau of Mount Roraima. Unlike the last two countries of this list, Mount Roraima is a much more accessible peak, although to protect the natural environment, only 200 people are granted permission to visit every month. The most popular trail to ascend this peak comes from the southwest slopes on the Venezuela side. It's time for a massive detour out to South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, the last territory of the video, and very much so up for debate as to if it's really South American. But like the Falklands, I think it's interesting to mention anyway. On the island of South Georgia is Mount Paget, soaring out of the icy Atlantic at 2,935 meters. This makes it the highest peak of any land controlled by the United Kingdom, twice as high as Ben Nevis. 2 British military officials were the first to reach the summit in 1964. It's difficult enough to even get to South Georgia, let alone climb this mountain, which experiences year-round snowpack and tundra climate. Returning to warm and sunny South America, Brazil takes us right back to the Amazon rainforest. Its highest point is Pico da Neblina, which just barely falls short of the 3-kilometer mark. The base of this mountain spills into Venezuela, but the summit is entirely on Brazilian soil. Translating its Portuguese name to English gives us Mist Peak, which is very appropriate as it's surrounded by clouds many days of the year. When the mist clears, its strikingly beautiful profile and extreme prominence is revealed. This is the highest point anywhere east of the Andes Mountains, which means we've got a lot of Andean peaks coming our way in the second half of this video. Before this assortment of Andean apexes, I want to give a special thanks to all of my new channel members. Memberships just launched last month, and they're a completely optional but fantastic way to support my channel and gain access to exclusive perks. Members can help me decide what my next geography video should be that I'm posting 2 weeks from now. The discussion post is live right now. Alright, with that said, let's get back to it. Venezuela is next in line, taking another huge leap in elevation to nearly 5,000 meters. Pico Bolivar is one of the northernmost and easternmost summits of the Andes, towering above the nearby city of Mérida. A cable car from the city reaches the neighboring peak of Espejo, making it one of the world's highest cable cars. From here, it's possible to hike to Bolivar, but dedicated and brave mountaineers can also climb the entire peak themselves without gondola assistance. Historically, this peak was covered by glaciers, covering as much as 10 square kilometers of the mountain in 1910, but now in the 21st century they've essentially disappeared, exposing the rocky face of this monstrous peak. I won't lie, I was expecting the Andes for Colombia, but its highest point is actually found in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta range, an isolated cluster of peaks near the Caribbean. To shake things up even more, there's a minor dispute for the highest peak here. Another summit named Bolivar is often considered to have the same elevation as Pico Cristobal Colon, both given as about 5,730 meters. Avid high pointers treat Cristobal Colon as the true high point, so we'll talk about that one today. This is also the 5th most prominent peak in the world at over 5,500 meters. Although very desirable to climb for the status and being Colombia's high point, dangers from drug traffickers and scammers deter many climbers, with expeditions now rare. Ecuador's highest point is a pretty famous one, the stratovolcano Chimborazo, at 6,263 meters above sea level. This is only the 39th highest Andean peak, but its true claim to fame is being the farthest point on Earth from the center of the Earth. At the equator, Earth bulges slightly due to centrifugal forces from its rotation, so Chimborazo's location in a country literally called Equator in Spanish makes it the farthest point from the core, despite being vastly shorter than Mount Everest. Partially because of this fascinating fact, but also due to the challenge of climbing it, it's very popular with mountaineers aiming to test their abilities with technical equipment and snowy terrain. Down in landlocked Bolivia is Nevado Sajama, the country's highest point at 6,542 meters. It's an extinct volcano rising up from the Puna grasslands just about 20 kilometers from the Chilean border. The elevation of its surroundings is already impressively high, so relative to some other peaks on this list, its prominence isn't that much at 2,428 meters. Located in and protected by an eponymous national park, this picture-perfect mountain is held sacred by the indigenous Aymara population. In an incredibly badass display of human abilities, and possibly the coolest thing I've ever shared in one of these high point videos, a game of football, soccer, my fellow Americans, was held at the summit of Sajama in 2001. That is so cool. Okay, it's time for the top 3 mountains of the list. Taking the bronze medal is Peru's Huascarán at 6,768 meters above sea level. A mountain with 2 distinct summits, it's the south one that claims Peruvian high point status. Huascarán holds another intriguing title, the place with the weakest gravitational force on Earth, at about 9.76 meters per second squared compared to the highest of 9.83 seen closer to the poles. It's a tiny difference, but still really interesting to think about. It's also more unfortunately known for a 1970 avalanche that was the deadliest in human history, killing upwards of 30,000 people. Sad history aside, this mountain remains a sought-after destination for ambitious climbers worldwide. Second place goes to Chile and its Ojos del Salado, climbing to 6,893 meters in elevation on the border with Argentina. This volcanic peak, part of a larger complex of volcanoes, is in fact the absolute highest volcano in the world, and at the summit is a crater lake which is considered the highest lake in the world. Despite these 2 impressive geographic superlatives and being Chile's high point, Ojos del Salado is still a very tough mountain to climb. It receives just a few hundred visitors annually who attempt to reach its summit. Being in an extremely arid part of South America known as the Arid Diagonal, there isn't much of a permanent snow cover on the peak despite its frigid temperatures and high elevation. You might have seen this coming. Argentina's world-famous Aconcagua comes in at 6,960.8 meters above sea level. Not only is it Argentina's highest point, but also the highest in all of South America and both the western and southern hemispheres. Its entire elevation is also its true prominence, making it the world's second most prominent mountain behind only Mount Everest. It's literally just Asia that stands in the way of Aconcagua's global records, as it's the tallest mountain outside the continent. Given all of these incredible stats, as well as the fact that it's considered an easy climb in mountaineering, thousands of people attempt to reach its summit every year, with only about 1/3 of them succeeding. It is quite simply one of the world's greatest natural wonders, providing an awe-inspiring glimpse into the extremes of Earth's geography. Thank you so much everyone for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this South American tour. I love producing videos like this one, and I can't wait to post another in 2 weeks. Once again, a massive thank you to all the channel members out there who get to help me decide what that video will be. Until then, some more GeoGuessr videos are coming your way soon. Thanks so much again for your time, and I will see you later.